Welcome, friends, to Reality Test. What is reality testing, you may ask? Well, it's something we all do every day, maybe with our loved ones over dinner, with coworkers at the water cooler, etc., when we check our subjective or personal emotions, thoughts, and so forth against objective or sort of more agreed upon fact-based reality. Although, because Dr. Ray and I, Dr. Kay, are social constructionists, we don't actually believe there's one true objective reality, but rather our own personal versions of it constructed in the context of relationships. But you get the idea. So here in Reality Test, we're going to be testing the castmate realities and the producer antics of our favorite reality TV shows against what we know as licensed psychologists about the reality out here, off of our TVs. We hope you'll join us as we attempt to reality test. Listen, y'all, we have a lengthy version of our disclaimer in the show description text, also in our old episodes, but we do ethically need to at least include part of it at the start of each episode. So here's our briefest version of the disclaimer. If you've heard it before, you can skip ahead 30 seconds, or for the old episodes, 2 minutes. So although we're licensed psychologists, psychotherapists, supervisors in the context of our professional roles, we are not acting as therapists in the context of this pod, neither for you nor for the reality castmates we discuss. We will give our opinions as our whole human selves, albeit supported by our psychological knowledge, and we will talk about diagnoses rather than assigning them, as we cannot ethically assign diagnoses without formal psych assessment. But both the opinions and diagnoses we discuss might easily be erroneous, as we don't personally know the folks in reality TV shows. That's it. Thanks, y'all. Now check out our campy theme song.
Are you feeling stressed? Your head's all messed? Well, let's forget all the rest. Fuck it, we're blessed. Cause it's time to talk reality test. Come with us. Let's reality test. Welcome to Reality Test. I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Dr. Kay. Feel free to check in and take a seat wherever you like. We're going to award show, baby. This is award show season.
So excited. So exciting. Yeah, this is when all like the Oscar films come out. It's so fun.
Nomination season. Everyone's trying to take their shot at getting nominated. You know, all this like very good old school white boys club. Great, you know, racist, sexist stuff happening. Love it.
Hashtag Oscars so white. It's kind of feeling that way this year.
Yeah, like, historically it's atrocious. Can you believe Halle Berry isn't she still the only black woman to win best actor?
Is she really?
Yeah, best actress specifically.
That is atrocious.
Yeah.
Viola Davis,
like 3 times over. She deserves that. 3 times over.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so many other people too. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, so many do. It's really, really bad. It's just such a microcosm of our larger society, but also Hollywood. Hollywood is deeply, deeply sexist and misogynistic and racist. And then their excuse for it is to say, but this is what people want. This is what people are looking for. We're just responding to what, you know, it's a supply and demand. It's like, whatever. If you gave people an actual model for what it would look like to have equity and equality, people would start to like it. You just have to show them what it looks like. And that's the tough part. It really is like art imitates life, life imitates art. It's like you could actually get us rolling on this in a really important way that they do not. Some people do, like some directors and movies for sure are really important, but they're never the ones that are like the big blockbusters, you know?
Yep. It kind of reminds me of IQ tests, which are deeply embedded in like white supremacy culture.
Yep.
And it's the same thing for what's considered critically revered in movies and what's considered smart, like movie making is very, very deeply white and that kind of white pretentiousness. And it sucks. It sucks that gets reinforced in so many spaces.
No, totally. It's elitist as well. It's like classist and ableist and all of the isms. And same thing with academia, where we work, you know, it's deeply ingrained in white supremacy. It's very dark. Yeah, like you said, what's considered smart. Same thing in academia, you know, very white authors, and it's depressing. We have a long way to go. I think the fact we're talking about it is good. There are ways in which circles within bigger circles have been talking is important, but there's still like small circles within those bigger circles. You know, within Hollywood, it's a small group, and within academia, it's a small group talking about it. And that small group in academia is being targeted. Like there are videos of people, of faculty members of colleges who are talking about DEI topics, and particularly faculty of color, that then white supremacists are calling out and doxing and like targeting. It's so fucked up. It's so dark.
The president of Harvard, I think, had to step down because people were like looking through her fucking dissertation.
Research. Yeah.
Like,
saying that
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and she did kind of like, it was like a little unethical, but it's a little unethical. And if we really looked at everything unethical that everyone did, everyone would be fired. All of the white people would have been fired for decades at Harvard if they really dug in deep like that. So yeah, for that reason, it is super deep fucked up. She and her husband, right? I think her husband too.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's awful. And frankly, if you look through my dissertation, there are probably mistakes or things that I quoted incorrectly or cited wrong or all that shit. Like, I think that no academic is free from those kinds of errors.
Oh, you know what? We're talking about two different people because it was also the DEI person at Harvard who also got fired, and she and her husband got fired, but I don't know what he was doing because of their research where they like repeated samples. They used the same sample twice, but didn't say that. They acted like they recollected data. So that was what was unethical. But yeah, what the president of Harvard was, that was just right. That was misquoting or something.
Yeah, I think she misquoted. And
that's
I'm
ridiculous.
I'm sure I've done that. I mean, please don't look through my articles, but I'm sure I've like fucked some things up in the past. Unfortunately, it happens. People are fallible.
Right. And even in academia, like highest levels, we teach doctoral students it's considered a type of plagiarism. But even when people plagiarize, they get a couple, learning opportunities because it is easy to do it, unfortunately. Like if you use the wrong page number, you're technically plagiarizing. So it is that's something we learn from and keep growing rather than just immediately punish someone for. But the other thing about like reusing the sample was like a little bit unethical. And I still think it wasn't fair to like come after her for that. I don't think that's fireable personally either. That's again, the sort of like, if we went to that level with white folks and their research too, we'd find all sorts of bullshit. There's been unethical research at the beginning of time. Problematic.
Absolutely.
We still revered Zimbardo, even though he did the prison experiment.
And Milgram with the shock studies. Not good.
No.
Not good.
We're deep the fuck in right now, dude. Sorry. Yeah. Realize where we are.
Yeah.
We're
going for it.
Tuskegee
experiments.
Yeah, exactly.
Syphilis. Yeah. Bad. Like, feel free to Google all these things in your own time. Not great.
No. And historically, all of our research is very white. It's like it's by white authors of white populations. So there's a deep need for us to keep sampling larger populations and not just white people. So yeah, lots of unethical things to be found there. And where we got here was because we were talking about how people are targeting faculty of color at all institutions, and it's really dark. And we are kind of only going backwards with the current president. But here's how I'm going to link this back. Our president, to-be, is also a host of a reality television show historically. So here we go. We're going to talk about reality TV today to be squishy and get away from the dark parts of our president.
Perfect.
Squishy in a good way. We're going to be fluffy. Which will bring us into the warmness and warmth of our award show. We are heated. Yay! We're warmed up. We're ready to do it. And we will tell you a little bit about it in case you don't know. Our award show is where we give 8 awards out to any reality TV we've watched over the past 2 weeks now, because we're doing every other week award shows. And so it could be any reality TV shows, not just the ones we're recapping. You'll notice that every award has the word test in it because this is reality test after all. So there will be some funny emphases as we tell you the names of the awards because we're emphasizing test. Before I show you that and give you a sample of that, I'm first going to say I'm talking about Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Real Housewives of New York, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and Survivor. Just added a little game show in there. How about you? What shows are you covering?
I'm covering those first 3, no Survivor.
Okay, fabulous. I love it. Dude, the Real Housewives are happening right now. And I'm not even doing Potomac right now just because I, sort of protested a little bit about how they had some changes recently from this last one. I just love Candace so much. But that means there's 4. There's technically 4 out that we could be talking about. So, all right. So tell me, to whom or to what moment did you give the Protest This Mess award? This is the meanest, saddest, drunkest, most obnoxious moment or castmate.
I found Mary and Meredith's conversation, chat, disagreement where they met at like a gallery to be pretty messy. I do think Meredith was trying to come from a good place. I do think that the critiques of her, of sometimes coming from a place of victimhood, are complicated and sometimes true, where I think she gets into her own pain and maybe fails to see what's going on for other people, which, as I learn more and more about psychodynamic theory, is a part of that triangle of like the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. She might sometimes lean into that victim role a little bit, which, you know, we can all fall into various roles at various times. But Mary's really going through something right now. Like, she's having a really rough time. And I do think when Mary feels attacked or upset about something, I think she often gives it back as hard as she gets, if you will, and is very quick, I think, because of the own things she's been through in her life, to like be like, well, I don't care about you. I like to kind of go for the jugular a little bit, or like maybe devalue a little bit. And the conversation just felt messy and it didn't go anywhere. And it was kind of sad because they were good friends for a bit.
Yeah. It was even a little bit like childish.
Yes.
You know, it's tough.
Yeah, it was tough to watch. It was messy. I didn't come out of there being like, oh, I feel like either of them was really in the right or any of them was really in the wrong. It was just kind of a messy fight, which was why it got my Protest This Mess award.
Love it. Well deserving. Mine was similarly from Salt Lake City, and it was Bronwyn, because I want to like Bronwyn so much. I know she's getting so much airtime. I think she's funny, and I think sometimes I really like how she just calls shit how it is. I actually think she does do that sometimes. Yeah, but she's just like, wow, unnecessary messiness the last 2 episodes. Like, I just can't. And even the way that so like one of the things was she was like taking up with Brittany and Maylee, which is weird because Maylee's Whitney's girl and Bronwyn's fighting with Whitney during the episode where she takes up with her. But then she like, one thing I liked was how she played devil's advocate at one point to Brittany, where she was like, well, do you think maybe she didn't know that that's true? And Brittany was like, no, of course she did. Like, I liked that she played devil's advocate with her. That felt more authentic. But the way she just like I knew as soon as Brittany was like, can we be friends for a little bit? I was like, girl, she's not going to be your friend. She just immediately turns around and tells Angie, even though she was fighting with Angie, what Brittany had said. So it just was like so small, you know, like it felt very small. I just was like, why not be a little bit more of the bigger person here and just try to whatever. I think if it's genuinely something that Bronwyn does, like, so I want to believe that when she is telling people things that are happening, like what she does, what she's famous for, if anyone doesn't know, is she just like turns around and tells people what's being said about them, and often does embellish it. If she's just doing it because she is trying to like keep everybody open, like that's actually how you end triangulation, is to involve everybody in the conversation. But that's not what it feels like it's about. It feels very much more about like attention, or sort of like getting people to, you know, say the wrong thing so that then she can turn around and tell the other person what they said. So I just, I felt I didn't like how it looked in the last 2 episodes. I was like, you're making it hard for me to defend you. I really like you and I want to like you, and this is tough. So it felt very messy and not pleasant.
Yeah. I wonder if some of her own pain is her like weird dynamic with her husband, where like she's clearly she's clearly like a feminist. She has feminist values, but then she lets this man talk to her in ways that I think contradict her feminist values. And that is probably hard because financially, you know, she's not in a position of power in this relationship.
Right. I also think she may have been putting up with it in a way where she didn't realize it was happening. Like, I think now that it's on camera, it's like forcing her to look at how he treats her. And so like we see her when she's in her testimonials, like talking to camera, that she's like putting things together in the moment about what it's like. So like, because when they have people do their testimonials or their confessionals, when they're talking direct to camera, they show them scenes. They'll say like, what do you think about this? Or what was going through your mind during this? So I think she's seeing some of those scenes and sort of being like, wow, yeah, that is kind of fucked up. Or like, you know, and I think in that way, I totally agree. She's having that cognitive, help me with that.
Dissonance?
Yes, thank you. She's having that cognitive dissonance where how she sees herself is not fitting with what she's seeing on camera. And I think that's really tough. I totally agree. I think they all have a lot of pain. Like, I really think that about really pretty much all of the housewives on all of the shows. They all really have some really deep stuff going on that is sad. And that I don't know that they're all aware of what those things are, but at least they're, you know, it's understandable. Most of the time their behavior is understandable. And so, yeah, that makes it hard when like other people are like, why are they, you know, all they do is scream at each other or whatever. It's like, well, we kind of like feel for them, you know, like I actually feel for what these women are going through.
I do too. And their lives are complicated, hard, and there's so much that we don't see that I think comes into these interactions between these women. And
Totally. Yeah, it's like the Kyle thing where it's like Kyle does keep a lot of stuff off camera. They all do that. That's not just Kyle. Like Dorit's calling Kyle out for that, but that's something they all do and should do. They should protect certain things.
And Dorit 100% did, because clearly PK and she have been living separate lives for a long time.
Fighting.
Yeah. But anyway, so a related award, who was doing the mostest for you this week? So what was the most cringe or embarrassing behavior that you witnessed with our dear reality TV friends?
So one thing was actually also Meredith. These are Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. One was Meredith at her own bat mitzvah telling Angie to leave and getting security to come bring her out after like really not fully understanding what even happened. It felt like a lot. They're very much doing the most test. I also think, I think it was producers, but they gave Angie Brittany's coat when it was like clearly not Angie's coat. And there was no reason for the security to have picked up the wrong coat. So it's like very clearly somebody intervened with that. I'm assuming it was production, but that whole scene was just definitely the mostest. And the other part with Meredith was the party that was in 2 episodes ago where she said, I'm really just inviting my closest friends. And the first person who gets there is Brittany, and Seth hasn't even met her. I was like, what? Just your real friends? So I thought that was actually funny.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm sure Brittany appreciates. Yeah. I feel like Brittany is such an easy target this season. I think there's something about her that is feels very developmentally young, and perhaps it's like the culture that she is in. But I find her very deeply frustrating. I'm sure that her kids have a lot of pain with her in the ways she, for example, goes on 10 dates when she has a breakup versus maybe spend time with herself or her children. That's a judgment I'm having that may be sexist. I probably should explore that more, but I feel frustrated with it. But there's also something very like naive about her or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, there is something that's a little bit stunted, I think. Like it's probably trauma, therefore, like she got traumatized at a certain age and developmentally she got stuck at that age. I'm assuming it's the time when she first got married, honestly, or like, realized what Mormonism meant about her role as a wife, which is to like put her own needs last. But she also seems to, we talked about this before, but the Mormon culture seems to be that you put your husband even above your own kids, which is part of why they're sort of out of the picture, I'm imagining. But yeah, she didn't even really go on 10 dates, right? She was sleeping, or like she was dating 3 guys, and someone said 10. And so then that got like put in the mix, but it was really just 3. But
that's better.
Yeah. And 2 of them were people she was already kind of dating, but she included Jared in the 3, and he was the one she was breaking up from, which like he's the worst. But yeah, dude, he was talking to Mary. We saw that this episode, right? 2 episodes ago, we saw that it turns out Jared was texting with Mary too.
I missed some of the, was that 2 episodes ago? Oh, maybe I didn't miss that. Maybe I just didn't. Maybe I was like getting a glass of water or something. I don't know.
It was very quick. Yeah, very quick. She just quickly told us. I'm pretty sure it was 2 ago. Yeah, it's pretty wild. He's just getting busy.
Mary's married.
Yes, she's also married.
Mary Cosby? Yeah.
Although, where is he? He's still gone, huh? We haven't seen him.
I don't know. Yeah, what you would think maybe. I don't know what's going on. They don't seem to have like the best dynamic, but
yeah, which also seems like rooted in trauma there too. Just trauma everywhere. What about you? What about you? What did you do for doing the most test?
We talked about this in our Beverly Hills recap, which you should definitely listen to. But Dorit, in her conversation with Kyle when they were yelling at each other, Dorit was just not listening at all. And I think she came in with a perception of what Kyle was going to say and didn't even give Kyle a chance to like not say that. And I think she in this moment very much sees herself as in the right and Kyle as in the wrong, which is, of course, there's nuance and complications to all of these things, including their disagreements. So I feel for Dorit. And as I think I mentioned on Instagram, that's where there's like a lot of displacement going on, where I think her pain about her marriage is being taken out on Kyle, and frankly, vice versa. I think they're both doing it. Yeah. So yeah, it's sad to see because they were good friends. Whatever Kyle tries to say, I think they were at least like them and their partners were friends and stuff.
Yeah, their partners were best friends for sure. I totally agree with that. And I think they were like on-screen friends too. I really believe that was a part of it, which I think even Dorit has not denied. Like when Kyle says that, where she's like, yeah, but it's always been on screen that we have lunch or whatever. She hasn't really denied that part of it. And she doesn't, I don't think she sees that as a problem either. I think she still feels vindicated in saying, you've been a terrible friend to me, even if we're only talking about in the world of on TV. You know, I think she's okay with that still being the parameters of the fight. I think also, I had said last episode, our podcast episode, that Kyle said on Watch What Happens Live that they're going to explain to us the like more about the fact about that scene from BravoCon. And it happened this episode, and basically there is no more. The more is like the other stuff she was saying. It isn't really just like that scene is actually just as fine as it seems. Like she laughs with Dorit. I do get why she was a little hurt. I think Dorit could have said like, I'm just kidding, you know, or something. Like she left it as Kyle's third, and which means even after Kim. I mean, that is kind of rough, you know? So I kind of get it that like is a little piece of a bigger puzzle where she feels like she could have at least just been like, I'm just kidding. Of course, Kyle's, you know, whatever. Because honestly, I think Kyle wonders if Kathy is first in Dorit's book, which I also wonder. So
yeah, I do too. And yeah, like that's where Kyle's part of her shit lives is with her sisters. It's very intense and charged. And so maybe she didn't need to say that.
Yeah. So how about testing 1, 2, 3? This is our best production ad, or maybe it's the worst, because we're also saying best or worst producer antic. How did they get involved, good or bad?
Real Housewives of New York. Erin went through an abortion when she was 18, just went to college. It was a really intense story. And she made the decision because this was going to come out in interviews she was doing with, I think, Glamour magazine, or
I think it was Glamour. Yeah.
It's one of those magazines. She wanted to let her dad know, and she told him, and they had a really good conversation. He actually admitted that he too had been a part of an abortion, and Erin, maybe telling tales out of school, said that her mother had also gotten an abortion. So, you know, this issue touches a lot of people, not to get too political. Oh, yeah. And Jenna, yes, I will bring that up later, too.
Okay, yeah.
But yes, so it was really beautiful, I think, and really well done in the episode. And I think what was so heartbreaking and touching was then that this was connected to Erin's father's passing, which happened 4 months later. And I think she mentioned being really relieved that they had that conversation. And it was kind of chilling to see it at the end. It was like, oh, wow. Oh my gosh. So I thought that was a good,
off
go ahead,
camera
please.
too. Or like you said, off mic too, we didn't know he was sick. So like, yeah, it was very chilling. It was very sudden. And maybe she didn't know either. Therefore also very chilling and sudden for her.
I'm sad because he's actually been like kind of on the show more than other parents, I would say. Maybe not. There's some parents have been on, but
I would say more. I guess, yeah, Jessel's mom has been on a lot, but I think he's been on more than Erin's mom. Like Erin's mom just barely came on the scene this season. I guess it's also thanks to Brynn that he's been on so much, but
and her kind of dynamic with him. But yeah, I'm feeling for Erin, and that was a really nice scene to get to see. And good job, producers. It was well done. Nice work.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like this last 2 weeks, they drew attention to some very important issues. There's 3 that I can think of just off bat, but one is abortion, one is sexual assault through Bryn's story, and then one is through Robert Jr. and Mary's conversation, which is like suicidal ideation and depression. So that's my producer, my testing 1, 2, 3 is about the Robert Jr. and Mary of it all. So on the one hand, like, so important to draw attention to this. For those who didn't see in Salt Lake City, Robert Jr., who's just, I guess, like kind of, I want to say he's like college age, but he's not in college, but he like lives with Mary. He's been pretty much like shut up in his room a lot. She sort of asked him what's going on. He ended up disclosing like a sort of a little bit of a like tumble down a hill in terms of just like telling her every single type of substance he's used and all of it like mixing substances. And then he ends up saying, for example, I feel like life is chicken unseasoned. And if I get high, it adds seasoning. But he also said one of like the most depressing things, like I just like bawled through the scene when he said that he feels like a stain. It just was like the most fucking upsetting and triggering. just for anybody with that kind of depression, just I could imagine so triggering. And I just was like, wow, this is so both important and also a little disturbing. So I thought like on the one, it was so important they were drawing attention to this. On the flip, there's two issues I have. One is that I kind of feel like he doesn't have the right headspace to give consent for this to be on TV. Like he doesn't,
I agree.
You know, if you're that deeply depressed, you aren't thinking clearly. And I don't think it was fair to just like put all of that on TV. Like I'm not repeating the substance use stuff in detail because that felt like too much. We didn't need to see that. And I think the depression part was really important. But then he goes on to talk about suicidal ideation. And even that felt a little bit personal. I think it all is extremely deeply personal. What am I talking about? It's all deeply personal. But the ways in which, A, that was triggering and there was no trigger warning given. They didn't give any trigger warning at all. They just like jumped into it. That was really tough. Like we knew that they were going to have a deep conversation, but we didn't know what it would be about. And then suddenly we're talking about suicidal ideation. So I was thinking about folks who have had suicide attempts or other things like that, that was extremely triggering. My even bigger issue than the consent issue, which is big, is that then they put up a title card at the end. And the title card was for substance abuse. And I was so pissed. I was like, that, like, not only is not the only thing we're talking about here. By the way, great, like put that up, but then also put up a title card for depression and mental health. Mm-hmm. Because what you're inherently saying is that he was depressed and suicidal because of the substance use. Like you're saying that's the biggest issue here by putting up that title card. You're saying that's the biggest issue. When obviously he's deeply depressed and that's why he was using substances. So, wow, like really, I really got pretty angry about that. Like I feel like that's really doing an injustice to Robert Jr. It's like blaming him because substance abuse, while it shouldn't be blamed on the people who are using, is often blamed on the person who's using. And so then we're sort of saying like, well, if he hadn't used substances, maybe he wouldn't have been suicidal. And that's just not the case. And it really pissed me off. So I think in that way, I say worst antic, big time. Again, like glad we're bringing attention to this issue. I think it should have been handled differently. But I am glad. And I feel so deeply for Robert Jr. I mean, just the like, wow, I've never heard it explained quite like that. Like feeling like a stain. I just was like, oh, it's so deep. Like just my heart hurt for him. It's so, so sad. So
poor kid, wow. Honestly. I have to say the last couple seasons where I've seen him on screen, he has seemed like off.
Very depressed. He seems flat.
And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, and it turns out like, it sounds like he was a very good student, very, like all of these things.
But that's a problem too, because she said he was the perfect child. That is so much pressure. And like the perfectionism he probably had out of that was really deeply problematic, it seems. And then the other issue is she even says to him, you're the only reason I'm happy, which by the way, shows that she probably has depression too. Like it probably runs in the family because she said before you were born, I was never happy. And then, so that also puts pressure on him to be there for her. He even said the only reason he didn't, commit suicide or die by suicide is because of her. What happens when she's not around, So like, this is like that kind of pressure that she puts on him, also like both pressure and then also being like the one thing that makes him feel like he's needed is just like so messy, intricate, clearly connected to the depression. And it's really sad. The perfectionism thing really got to me. And I think that's a topic we should unpack further in the future, maybe in a mental health checkup, because perfectionism is attached to, or like sort of we've found that is connected to depression, low body image, low self-image, and OCD and other types of things. So a lot comes out of being perfectionistic. That is quite sad. So no.
And and Mary's trauma is in part like she was kind of forced to marry her grandfather. And so I've always felt with their dynamic that it does feel very attached to him. Not that she makes him into a partner, but it's like there's something, it seems like he is her confidant. He is her best friend.
He's closer to her age, probably.
Yeah, frankly. That's a lot of like her and Robert Jr. against the world. And that is a lot of pressure to put on a kid.
Yeah. She even tells him, I love you more than Dad. Don't tell him I said that.
Don't tell. Which is like a little like we're in on a secret that Dad's not. It's, And I feel for her. Oh, go ahead.
No.
Please.
You feel for her.
I feel for her too, of course. And this is what often happens. Like she's got her own trauma. It impacts him and his trauma. Of course it does.
And I think she like had a sense of ownership over marrying whom she did, Robert Sr., because it seemed like there was like this element where she felt like her grandma bestowed this upon her in a positive way. Like was like, I'm choosing you instead of your mother. Like I'm jumping over your mother and giving you the church and you, my husband. And whomever gave her the message that the grandma thought, like whether it was grandma who actually said, I want you to marry my husband, or whether it was him. Like I could see him being like, she wanted you to take the church and that means marrying me too. Whatever happened there. I think she thought that was a choice she was making too, and that it was a good thing that she was trusted with it. So I think that also gets tied up in the trauma, because then it sort of feels like that opens her up to self-blame for it. And she even brought up feeling self-blame, which is so common for a parent of a child with substance use. She was talking about self-blaming associated with that as well. Again, like super common for parents to think they've, messed up in some way. And really, honestly, you cannot be around your child every minute of the day. And even the messages you send your child, like, right, of course, but no one's perfect. And so, of course, some of these messages around perfectionism could have affected him, but so could messages that came from school or, So I think the self-blame, while common and understandable, is really only further hurting and straining the parent and therefore child dynamic.
And ultimately, there's lots of parent-child relationships that are very close, right? And maybe one person has trauma that don't end in severe substance use and suicidality. So it's never a one-size-fits-all
or perfectionism
situation.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
fucked up, triggering, and important. It's good that we're talking about it. It's good that people will ideally be talking about it in hopefully a not blaming way of any kind in terms of the substance use. Substance use is a symptom, not a cause. So, yeah. All right. Anyway, that's that.
Yes. So now we're on to test results, right? Am I correct? I think so. Yes. So we're talking about holding castmates accountable, reading their results after being tested. Who has had the most or least growth from your perspective?
So this is from just the most recent episode of Real Housewives of New York, but we hear Brynn talk about a sexual assault, and it is, I think, very growth fostering in a couple ways. So it's growth fostering for her as she talks about it. It's also growth fostering for us as an audience to hear her talk about her sexual assault. And she doesn't detail the narrative of what happened, but just what she got out of it, or like what she learned about herself out of it, which was feeling dumb, embarrassed, and self-blaming, which is all incredibly common. And so, like, I would say far more common than not having those emotions for sexual assault survivors. So I think it's so important that she's sharing those things. I think a little problematic is she never talks about whether she's in therapy or went to therapy. I think on the one hand, so as I have talked about at least once, I'm writing a book I was asked to write about using creativity in healing from sexual violence trauma. So she's talking about how she's writing her book, her memoir, as a way of dealing with and coping. And she even says it's like therapy about the fact she's writing the book, which is exactly my point about the book I'm writing. But the book I'm writing also says this is not in and of itself alone its own treatment. I think especially in more complicated sexual assault cases, that shouldn't be the only, it's within the context of therapy that I'm talking about it, the creativity and use of creativity. And I just never really hear her say that part of it. And I worry a little bit because she's clearly not done processing it. And if you are just processing it by creating a piece that other people will judge, I worry about that for her sake. And so it's like a little scary in some ways, but I also feel like this is her, it's important she's talking about it, and that's growth fostering in a lot of ways.
Totally. Oh, I'm excited to watch that episode. It sounds like really important conversations, and poor Brynn.
And it's tough because Brynn does put her foot in her mouth. Like the racism with Uba was awful. And again, it's like, I don't know how to defend some of that. But at the same time, I have always felt really deeply for Brynn with just the amount of trauma she's had and how much she brings attention to lots of different traumas through her story. And I also know that all of that facade and humor, she's hiding behind it with deep hurt, suffering. And so all the flack she gets for some of those things, I'm like, but that's a coping mechanism that she kind of needs right now. So yeah, I don't know. It's another moment where it's like, this is the part of Brynn that is so important and why she gets so much screen time, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, she's learned that charm is a really good coping mechanism for her, and that's understandable.
And humor, which she's great at. And then also the sexualizing. I think she thinks that if she's sort of flirty and fun, that people will treat her differently. And that's true in our culture, sadly, And so that's also a sort of coping mechanism for her to win people over. So.
Totally. Poor Brynn.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Ray?
We talked about this last week a bit, but Erica this season has been really lovely, unless that's changed in the most recent episode.
No. She's been great. What a delight. I love her this
season.
Yeah.
We're so proud of her because I think she is taking a lot of the skills that she learned in therapy when she was going through a really rough time with her divorce and is being helpful and a friend to both Kyle and Dorit right now who need a friend and need someone who's not judging them. And I think she's doing that in a way that is not all about what she went through. She's able to see their situations as different and have empathy for them. And the way that she even said, you felt like reflecting on what they felt, you felt really unheard by X or this, like not even speaking to the specifics of the incident, but the feeling. And that's what matters. So I think she's had a lot of growth and I'm happy for her.
Yeah, me too. That therapist really is doing great work with her. And honestly, when we see the therapist on camera, I'm not always like, I'm not always like wowed, but I really think obviously it's really landing with Erica in important ways. So it's Erica's doing the work, and that's important. And that's really, really cool to see. I love that. That's so good.
Yay. And she's
it's so
ready.
True. Like, yeah, she's learning. It's so true that like Kyle and Dorit are like the perfect person for each other for this. Like they're both going through the same, they would be really great if they could sort of collaborate on it together or commiserate. And so instead, I think Erica's sort of like doing that for both of them, and using her own, not each other's thing, but using her own. I think that you're right. She's playing a very important part and also not doing it in a way of like keeping them apart, which is also really key. Like she's not trying to be the needed one. She's trying to get them back together, frankly, but
she's not being like, well, they said blah, blah, blah about you, she's, I think, handling her role really well, which is great.
Yeah. Love it. Yay. Go Erica. Love it. Love to see it.
Yeah. We love to see the growth.
Yeah. It's some good feminism, which is the opposite of our next award, which is the Testosterone Award.
Oh, I'm in the dark.
Come back to the light.
Testosterone is very dark. Here we go.
You're right. You can stay there until we get to the Bechdel test.
Yeah. That would be very cinematic of me.
Exactly. Very on brand. I love it. It's a vibe. Yes. So the Testosterone Award is for the most patriarchal or white supremacist, misogynistic moment, basically getting boned by the testosterone in the room or in the body, depending on who we're talking about. So what did you give or to whom the Testosterone Award?
PK, because he acts in ways that are very sexist. He said that one of the things he's most bummed about with Dorit, I don't remember the exact quote, but like essentially she was this shiny object that was attached to him at the hip who like made parties more fun and like like something about upgraded every room she was
stylized.
In.
She stylized the night. Yeah, he said she would stylize the night, and she also said she was vibrant. It's just awful. Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about this last time. She's been through trauma. She's got 2 kids, and maybe she's learned that she doesn't want to be your shiny little squeaky toy anymore. I don't know.
And Shadow. She's both a squeaky shiny toy, and she was his shadow, the like dark part on the ground. Like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. So like PK, if that's what you want in a woman, like, great, good for you. I find it gross and not great. And I hope you have some growth and learning about maybe seeing women as whole people and not just objects that make you look good.
Exactly. And like, maybe it's not women for him, it's like figuring out what he actually wants in a partner that is not about him, and the person consenting to being that for him is the key. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then if they change their mind, like maybe Dorit did consent to being that for him at first. And then, that also has to be okay if they change their mind.
Yeah. Maybe it was fun for a while. I can see that being fun for a bit, maybe. And then I, personally might get sick of it. I like being shiny, it's probably fun. But then I would imagine it would get old.
Well, and he knew all these famous people, right? And we see Dorit like gloms on to the famous person in the room. Like she wants to impress the famous person in the room, whether it's Jamie Lee Curtis or whether it's, Bose right now, whatever. She like, that's her like, sort of MO. And so I can see that would have been really exciting for her that he knew all these famous people. And so, yeah, then if you're being a shadow, because you get to meet these people and stylize the night for meeting these people, I can see that being exciting for a time. But she also has her own fame now. That could also be part of what's different about it.
Absolutely. What was your testosterone this week?
PK all day is a great one. And honestly, so is Mauricio. Both of them, I just can't with it too much. But I gave this to a micro moment from Real Housewives of Salt Lake City where Angie said to Henry, and Henry is Lisa's son. Angie has a daughter who I think is older than Henry by the looks of it. Maybe like same age. And she says to Henry as they're going off, she says, "Hey, Henry, keep an eye on her for me, okay?" And he goes, "Will do." And I just was like, bleh, 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 bleh. I was like, no. Like just reinforcing the idea that her daughter has to be looked after by a man. And then like reinforcing for Henry that he should be looking after the women. Like, and again, like, it's not like that's a bad thing if it was not gendered. It's gendered very much so. And I just felt like, let's not kind of reinforce that vibe for people, including your daughter. Like, she can look after herself. She could look after Henry, you know, and if she is older, which I think that was sort of my take on it too. It was just sort of like, I don't know if that's the right order of events here. But yeah, it just felt, those little micro moments are just moments where, especially with kids, get me a little bit like frazzled, or not frazzled really so much as like a little like peaked, you know, little spidey senses, because those little messages are the ones that really lend towards a lifetime of whatever, sexism or whatever for Henry and for her daughter too, Electra. So yeah, thought I'd draw attention to that little micro testosterone moment coming from Angie.
And I'm sure that Henry's getting enough of that from Lisa because she's very image focused. So I think that that's already happening. Yeah. And like Angie's husband is not a traditional like hegemonic masculinity kind of dude. So like what has she internalized? Like it's like that's the person you married. And so why not like have a little more fluid of a conceptualization of masculinity? I don't know.
Exactly. I totally agree. It's a great opportunity to show different ways of being in the world. And I think that's her whole argument about Sean too. So that would be good to live through in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I next?
Yes.
Oh, are you next?
Oh yeah, you say it though. You intro it.
Oh, cool. So now I'm in the light again. This Zoom lighting is so weird. So
I know.
Let's talk about something a little better here, which is our Bechdel test, which is our most feminist, anti-racist, gay moment of the week.
Fabulous. So I gave this a tripart here, which are the Real Housewives of New York to Aaron and Jenna talking about abortion. Incredible. Absolutely wonderful scene. They both chose to tell everyone about it. And Aaron clearly had some nervousness around telling people even just through the magazine article. So I think that was really strong of her to tell everyone through the show. That's way more people, you know, I'm assuming. Yeah. So then that was number one. And then also Real Housewives of New York with Brynn talking about the sexual assault. I think that was really, really important feminist moment and growth. And I also thought that Meredith also in Real Housewives of Salt Lake City with her bat mitzvah, I think that's more of the like anti-racist or anti-Semitism. No, anti-Semitism. Like pro-Jewish, you know, like pro-ethnicity kind of moment there, where I think her singing from the Torah, showing that, and like the bat mitzvah was an important moment for ethnicity at an important time. Because ultimately, Jewishness does not equal, you know, choices by the government of Israel. So,
or Zionism. Being Jewish does not mean you're Zionist.
No, correct. So, yeah, important moment, I think. How about you?
Mine was one of the ones you mentioned, which is, and like highlighting a little more, like Jenna made a choice there. And I think gave Aaron a bit of a gift because she did not have a plan to share this on a greater platform. She has not told really anyone in her life about it, it sounds like. And it was like we were talking about this a bit offline, like that is really shitty to like get too excited and come. Now I'm in the dark again. That's not a consent moment. So that really sucks.
That the man did. Right, exactly.
Yeah, the man did to Jenna, which really sucks. And she made a decision to, I think, give Aaron the gift of like sharing that and in the moment. And now she's like, oh, I haven't told my kid this, blah, blah, blah. And so like it has implications for Jenna. And I think she made a very feminist decision in the moment to like be with someone in that. And I thought that was really cool. Yeah, it was super empathic. It was like kind of lovely. It was a great moment.
I have a little bit of a like devil's advocate there. I also kind of felt like Jenna didn't really mean to. Is that weird? Like, I felt like she was almost sort of saying like, oh, that kind of came out. She's like, I just said it because I felt like Erin needed it. Like when she told us why she told her, it felt like it wasn't like fully thought through. And then I kind of felt badly for Jenna. I was like, I don't know if she like maybe should have known they were going to talk about that. So she could have made, it felt like a flash decision in some ways. Cause I think you forget the cameras are there, you know? And I think maybe in the moment she just sort of like didn't think through the fact she hadn't told her son yet. And then she's like, well, got to tell him now, you know? But at the same time, it does still speak to her feminism and empathy that she spoke, because it was about Erin. It wasn't about her in that moment. It was about like, I want to be there for my friend by sharing what happened to me. So I think that's really important. And it obviously isn't on Erin that Jenna, you know, nothing to take away from the moment. But yeah, I felt a little bit, I was like, ooh, I don't know if she like really wanted to talk about that yet. I just think she hadn't thought it through. I think ultimately she probably is grateful she did. You know what I mean? But I don't know if she necessarily would have made the same choice if she had more time. I don't know. No.
Yeah, it's complicated, and maybe under-processed for her, frankly. It doesn't seem like she's thought about it or talked about it very much.
Exactly. Yeah, which again is like in the long run better that she talks about it, you know. Which is good. Oh. Okay, well, fabulous. How about they were the worst test of friends, they were the best test of friends. And this is when there's like a good relationship. It could be romantic or just platonic friendship moments or people.
So after giving, Erin was a part of my Bechdel test moment. I'm going to have some frustration with her and how she spoke with Raquel when Raquel was like hurt by her because she was misleading about what Bryn's role in that whole prank was. And I think Erin just didn't quite like grasp that and came from a defensive place and came again kind of from a I'm the victim here kind of place. I think it's again maybe, and I want to be careful because I think women are often accused of taking on the victim role. So I think I'm learning about this triangle because I'm at a psychodynamic program and I find it interesting. But I think sometimes in those moments it's hard for Erin to see the role that she had in perpetuating harm, which she did. Like she made some choices to leave out how involved Bryn was in this prank. And that made Bryn look bad. And that was shitty. And I think Raquel, it was right to be like, what the fuck? You know, that wasn't cool. And I think like the nuances of that situation, Erin wasn't ready to deal with for whatever reason. Yeah. And I felt frustrated on Raquel's behalf because I think she was trying to give her some feedback that Erin just didn't seem to want to take. And what's going to happen, Raquel even kind of said it to Jenna, I feel like I should check back in with her, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I feel like Erin's one of those people who kind of makes you kiss the ring and like grovel a little bit and apologize. And in that she doesn't always acknowledge the harm that she's done. Yeah. And that feels frustrating to me.
There's a little bit of like an entitlement element there with Erin that's interesting. And I really appreciate that when you talk about the victim role, you bring up that you're talking about it in the sense of the triangle, because I do think that is a part of the like sexist, you know, rhetoric around women is like playing the victim as a phrase is very like sexist, because that's also something where it's like women see things in a different way than a lot of men do, where the relational thing does matter. And so when they bring up something like that, men will be like, you're playing the victim, it's not a big deal, get over it. It's like, no, actually that is important, what just happened there. And I think that's not what you're talking about here. What you're talking about here is just sort of the idea that she doesn't have the full breadth of awareness and self-awareness to be able to own the pieces that she plays in different dynamics. And it's pretty rare we see her take any sort of accountability. And so I think when Raquel was holding her accountable, what I will say is like Erin did in that moment feel super attacked. I kind of get that. Like this sort of ganged up on, you know, like everybody's sort of like looking into her and sort of like feeling like the heat of it really must feel like hot, honestly, like physically hot for her. And so I kind of get that. And also I think there was a way that later there could have been more accountability, you know, whatever. There's ways in which I kind of understand it, and still she doesn't do a very good job about taking accountability, like period.
In multiple situations. And it's like Bryn gets enough flack that she's kind of an easy target. So it felt unfair and like a cheap shot, I think.
Totally. That was a good important time for Erin. And like the like, you know, the distinction between she knew about this part of the prank but not that part of the prank, therefore she didn't know about the prank is wild. I like that Raquel was like,
Yeah, she knew about the prank. She put 2 and 2 together, and you made it seem like she didn't. And that's shady. That was a shady move that you made.
Totally. Oh, you know what? It was Jenna who said that. Jenna was like, she's talking about language semantics, and I'm not sure that really flies. I was like, thank you, Jenna. I'm glad you get it. Because they seemed to like really take to Erin's point. They were like, oh, okay. Well, we thought this. Bryn told us this. Like, they actually kind of blamed Bryn in explaining their reaction to it as well, which I didn't love that, because I was like, right, Bryn told you that and she was still right. You know, it's like sort of, but they're like saying, well, Bryn had just told me this, so that's why I came at you that way. And it's like, well, okay. I don't know. Anyway, it takes some of the onus off of Erin. There's a lot of scapegoating Bryn, like you said.
Yeah. But what about you? What was your test moment?
My bestest worst test of friends was in Survivor. Like this guy named Andy, who's just kind of like playing fast and loose with feelings and emotions and friends. And he like keeps flipping sides. And I'm pretty sure he's on the spectrum. I've actually talked about him before because he made that like weird choice in like the early episodes of saying like, well, this person was my number one and I was worried or whatever. And everyone was like, why are you telling us that? Or like, you know, so I think he potentially could be a little bit on the spectrum just with some social choices. He, however, right now he's like very full of himself and it's just a lot. I just feel like he's sort of like bull in a china shop a little bit. So I think that's not ideal, but that was a little bit more of an honorable mention, where the Salt Lake City example I have is Mary coming to Meredith's bat mitzvah. It's a little bit of a spoiler for you who hasn't seen the latest episode. But she comes late and she's like trying to get in at the window right behind where the ceremony is happening. This is the most awkward, uncomfortable thing maybe ever. It's incredible and terrible at the same time. Felt very much like production, you know, you could have like guided her, but you know, they let her kind of fall with that. But it was just really funny and sweet at the same time. And she had a good conversation with Meredith, sort of like try to sew it up a little bit, which I thought was sweet. But then right after all that's happening, we see Mary like turn to a woman who's seated and go, "Hi, beautiful." And she was like, "Hi, I'm Meredith's mom." And she's like, "Oh," you know, it's like, but it just was so sweet the way she was like, "Hi, beautiful." I was just like, that's such a sweet like way of responding to an older woman, just like sitting there doing nothing, you know. It's just like, what a sweet thing. I just really liked that a lot. And then I liked also that Meredith's kids at one point, like the three of them as sibs, were like holding hands during the bat mitzvah, and I thought that was a really cute relational moment. So those are my relational moments.
I like that for Mary, because Mary has sometimes been on the end of like negatively critiquing appearance, particularly with Heather. She said some pretty, awful things to Heather. So I'm glad that she also has moments of like bringing people up, because I think that's wonderful.
Me too. I liked that a lot. That was a refreshing kind of take from Mary. She definitely does go after look.
Yeah. Oof.
Is this, do I say this? No, I just said the last one. Okay, you.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Don't be sorry.
We sometimes struggle with this. You're right.
No.
I'll never be sorry.
Don't ever fucking be sorry. Just don't do it.
No, y'all, I should be sorry all the time. But maybe not for this. You're right.
No. Especially as women, we're encouraged to be sorry. Over the top amount of sorry. We could all cut off about 80%. That's my take on it.
And then focus on the actual 20% where we are like, but maybe we feel so defended and sorry all the time that it leads us, when we're really like, should be sorry, it's harder. I don't know. This is a rough draft, that thought.
I like it.
Rough draft thought.
I'm going to think about it, because that's true. There's something about it. It's like, I already say sorry so much. Like this, you know, there's something about that to be said. And it's like, then it make it become a bit of a defense. It's like, well, I just said sorry about this other thing. So like, why are you expecting me from, you know?
And I'm exhausted and have to keep my weight down and be nice to everyone and blah, 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 blah. Being a woman's hard, y'all. Dude. Not a new idea, but... You're welcome, world.
Yes, this is the best. This is what we offer. It's tough, man. It is though. And you know what? There are ways in which it should be said more. So I'm here for that. Like, it reminds me of that rant that America Ferrera makes in Barbie, the Barbie movie, where it's like, we're expected to do all these things, like be perfect, but not act like we're perfect, you know, like be nice to women, but not, you know, but still stand out. Or like, you know, it's like all of these conflicting necessities for us as women that are just absurd, and no wonder we're exhausted, you know. So I think that point is well taken regardless.
Don't be nice, but don't be too nice.
Yes. Don't be too nice, because then you're flirty, you know, or whatever. It's like, dress nicely, but don't be dressing in a way that you entice men, or like, you know, it's like,
It's like, what do I do? I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we get blamed no matter what is the point, because we're one down position, not men.
Yep. Good times. But anyway, so what about the award I always remember? That's what I was trying to say. The award I always remember, the testimonial. So this is the best confessional straight to camera moment that you saw this week.
Fabulous. And that was some sarcasm, just so everyone knows. We often forget this one. It's the tail end. It's also hard, I realize, because all the other things we can remember just from remembering what happened in the episode, this is like a specific thing. Like you have to remember a specific moment, which is tough. So Jenna to camera talking about you raise a child, and when they're born, your whole life becomes about them. Every decision is with them in mind. And then they grow up and walk away, and your job is to help them walk away. And like, she's like, what a weird thing that is. And I loved that. Straight to camera. And I also feel like that speaks to the difference between individualistic therapies and relational therapies, because in individualistic therapies like psychodynamic theory, really more psychoanalytic theory, the onus, or like the emphasis, I should say, is on the individual becoming an individual and like, leaving your parents and becoming solely you and standing out. Whereas in psychodynamic or more relational theories, specifically more relational, some psychodynamic still not true, but two-person theories, actually the focus is on being in relationship. Like, how do you be in relationship for the rest of your life, including with your parent, and so it is actually a different view of parenting as well, where it's like, you don't actually encourage your child to walk away. You encourage your child to explore and know that they can always come back, and that they'll always have that relationship with you. And I think that's a really nice reframe that I wanted to share with Jenna. She's listening, of course. So that obviously, of course, clearly, obviously. So that was my like big one that has quotes. But I will also say that Mary talking about the self-blame associated with her son, and Brynn talking about the self-blame associated with the assault, were both really, really important admissions that I think are just really important for our culture and for learning.
Yeah, I liked the Mary moment, and I'm looking forward to hearing Brynn share her story as well. A lot of vulnerability. New York is getting a lot of like bad press, at least on Instagram. I don't like. I feel like people are like, the new version isn't good or whatever.
Oh, yeah, and I think that a lot too. Yeah,
I don't agree with that. I think it's quite strong, and I think these women are slightly different, and maybe definitely like less like zany and off the rails than the past version. But I don't know, I find that interesting and enjoyable to watch. It feels more relatable. Not that any of my friends are as fabulous as the women on the Real Housewives of New York, but it's like these are actual fights that women in their 40s, 50s might have, or
30s. Yeah.
Totally. 30s.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels a bit more accessible. I don't know why people are, maybe it's racism because a lot of the people in the cast are people of color. I don't know, but.
About New York?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also thinking for us, it might be relatable because we're from New England too, or like the Northeast. I could see that being a difference too. But yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. I think there is definitely racism associated, especially, colorism with Uba too. There's a lot that comes out of it, which is really frustrating. And then Sai and Jessel. I think Jessel got like really a big fan at it, but the other thing I would say too is I hear what you're saying, because it's coming up a lot in the context of VPR. So Vanderpump Rules doing like a reboot where they're going to have a new cast and like start over with a new cast. It's getting compared to New York a lot, and people are like, why would you do that? Because New York was and it's like, yeah, I don't agree with that either. I think New York went very well, and I think they think that too. So I don't know. I don't know if they would have done that if they didn't think it went well.
Yeah. I guess people are going to hate on something that's new until they get used to it. That is a common human endeavor.
And no matter what you do, people are going to be angry. It's like there's always something that isn't. You can't make everyone happy, for sure.
No.
Tell me about your testimonial, dear Dr. Ray.
Already kind of mentioned this, but Erin talking about how it felt to have her dad hear about her abortion in the context of then him passing, I thought was a really lovely, touching moment where I was like, damn, wow, Real Housewives of, like, there were a lot of semantic fightings going on and about pranks and stuff. And then it's like, wow, this was like a really intense moment. And I felt grateful that we got to witness that. And
vulnerable, real,
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. That was really touching. It's like really pulled at your heartstrings. It's just really some really good touching things. I guess it's that season. I don't know. real emotional stuff happening on Real Housewives. Real emotional on Real Housewives.
That's right. Yeah, I think the shows are going great, and I'm so grateful that we have so many Real Housewives franchises happening right now. Like, lucky us.
Right?
My goodness.
We can just like pip pop around. We don't have to like spend a long time. If one of them's sort of like having a lull, you know, we have another one we can sort of focus on. That's kind of nice too. Like next week, we're going to recap up to date on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And then at some point, we're going to start also talking about
Southern Charm.
Southern Charm. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Very exciting. In the meantime, it's always a joy. And we hope that you will check us out on social media, because we are doing some things on social media, videos, including talking about the thing that you don't know about yet that's coming down the pike with a January landing time. So we will tell you more online as well as on these episodes. Stay tuned for that. You can find us at Instagram at Dr. Ray Pods and Dr. K Pods. And you can also find us on TikTok at dr.realitv, REALITV. And also at both YouTube and Facebook at Reality Test Pod. YouTube channel is literally at Reality Test Pod, no spaces, whereas Facebook page is obviously spaced. And as I always do, there is not anything else. That's where that ends. As always, it's my second time doing that, but still, there's not another thing. I need to learn that is where that ends.
Well, you're like listing, and you're like, it's a lot of mental energy, and then it's like, oh, we're at the end of it.
Oh wow, this is what it feels like to be here.
How did we get here?
Exactly. What else should we do, though? Tell us.
Download us.
Yeah.
Do it. If you want, I'll always consent forward. You know, we're not going to make you download us. And if you would, it would be lovely, because it will help us continue to do this thing that we love so much, which is our podcast.
Exactly. Thank you, and so much, and so much more. Thank you, and so much more. And we will look forward to continuing to connect with all of you in many different ways, because we very much appreciate being able to do so through this podcast. And downloading it is one way that you can continue that for us as well. So thank you. I'll just add.
Yes. And we'll see you next session.
Bye.